Come, spellweavers, reavers, rogues, and men-at-arms, and answer the call of adventure. Pick up your sword, your axe, your spellbook, your bow, your rulebook, and your dice, and join the forces of good in their eternal fight against vile monsters, conspiring min-maxers, horny bards, and blood-soaked murder hobos. Discover the treasure trove of role-playing games here on Rollin Bones. My name is Ryan Howard, and I shall be your guide. Good evening, Boneheads, and welcome back at long last to Rollin Bones with Ryan Howard, where we are making old school young again. I'm your host and king of the Boneheads, Ryan Howard, and thank you for putting up with kind of a long absence there. Last week, I was at the beach with my family, and the week before that, my guest, Alchemic Raker, had some difficulties as far as his power going out because he was in the path of a hurricane. So that's where I've been. But yeah, we're back, and I'm excited for this one today because at first I thought we were going to be talking specifically in and around the Western genre with our guest tonight, Matt D'Amico, but our pre-show discussion unearthed another topic that I will be unveiling as I bring Matt on and we begin our discussion. So be on the lookout for a surprise secondary topic that we'll be discussing on tonight's show. But before we bring Matt on, I want to remind everyone to like, share, and subscribe. That is the best way to let people know what we have going on here on Rollin Bones. Just kind of give us that little algorithmic bump, let people know that we're out here. And yeah, that's one of the best ways that you can support me. And also want to remind everyone that you can find us on various social media platforms. On X and Instagram, I am at Howard_Ryan Gregg. YouTube is Rollin Bones. Twitch is twitch.tv/RollinBonesRyan. And Substack is rollinbones.substack.com. I have not been as active as I'd like to be on Substack. We are, now that I'm back from the beach, and now that my adventure is fully written, we'll be getting back to some stuff on Substack. I recently did an article about black powder weapons and just kind of outlining my ideas for rules there, what I personally use at my table. Definitely helpful for Night Haven, that kind of stuff. But next article will be about dueling and, unique rules for dueling that fit within a D20 fantasy system. So I'm excited for that. I hope you guys are excited for it too. So yeah, that's out there. Let's go ahead and bring on tonight's guest, though. I'm going to drop the link to his Kickstarter here in chat. Currently, he has a Kickstarter campaign that is live with 7 days to go for Massacre Grounds, which is a 0-level funnel for Weird Frontiers, which is the DCC-compatible Weird West game. He is a former police officer, and from our brief conversations, both here and at North Texas, he seems like a great guy. So let's go ahead and give a warm Rollin Bones welcome to Mr. Matt D'Amico. Welcome to Rollin Bones, Matt.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Brian. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem at all, man. So, not to bury the lead, let's go ahead and get started with a little bit of discussion about this campaign here for Massacre Grounds, which, as you shared with me, is your first product, your first adventure that you are, sharing with people here.
Yeah, I wrote a level 0 funnel, and it's based out of the Arizona desert and the Superstition Mountains, which, if you're a history buff and you're an Old West buff, it's the Lost Dutchman gold mine. There's been, a lot of weird superstition. The reason the Superstition Mountains are called the Superstition Mountains because kind of the weird, creepy vibe they gave the Native Americans. So I thought that was a wonderful campaign setting to drop an adventure into. So it's a 0-level funnel, but it's also a campaign setting for future events. So I set it up with a lot of Easter eggs in it, a lot of hooks that a judge can go in and write their own. So a DM or a judge in DCC world can go in and take it and say, oh, okay, I'm going to have my characters go off and do that. So I've been playing for about 40 years. So I designed something that I would want to go like jump in and say, okay, I'm going to write something off of this little section, and so it's really written as a campaign setting for individual judges to build off of and have fun with. And then the 0 level funnel is extremely fun.
Hmm. Now this picture here, these are the mountains in real life, correct?
Yeah, that is actually what they call the Massacre Grounds. It's a really unique picture that we took. It's from a side. Most people take it from the other side. So we got a really unique picture because this is where I live. So I live not 20, 30 minutes from that. So I ride my horse up in the mountains all the time. Riding out to the Massacre Grounds is a 2-3 hour ride on a good day. You wouldn't do it now because it's super hot. But yeah, that's kind of the beginning. It kind of gives you the Superstition Mountains that are pictured is kind of the big castle that's on the cover. I know I sent you the cover. So the Massacre Grounds, if you scroll up there, so that mountain, if you scroll down to the one you had with the skeletons crawling out, that's the same look, but it's just from a different angle. So I took something that's a real place in Arizona history, and I built on it. And then, of course, we don't really, when we're out in the desert here, we don't have skeletons crawling out at us. But I thought that would be a lot of fun. And so there's a history to the Massacre Grounds. It's kind of local legend. And so I took that and kind of made it my own. And the Superstition Mountains, the castle that everybody sees on the TV, that's kind of the mountains in the background right there.
Gotcha.
And you'll see that's the other view of the mountains, that Superstition. Superstition Mountain, everybody looks at the big castle that's out front, but it's a huge mountain range. And it spans up into the Globe, Arizona, all the way down to almost Mesa, Arizona. It's Apache Junction. And then it spans north and then south to about the US 60, which is, a Florence area. But it's a huge mountain range. It's got a lot of Old West history, from Revis Ranch to, it just seemed like when I was starting, like right what you know. I grew up camping and horseback riding in the area. So it was when I sat down and decided, okay, I'm going to do a Western themed. I said, well, this is kind of a no-brainer. I'm going to start where I ride my horse every day. So, I would go out and I'd get inspired. And then, I grew up kind of, we have ghost stories and we have, campfire tales, and the Massacre Grounds is an actual real place. Originally, the local lore was, white settlers got massacred by the Apaches. Well, they've kind of debunked that. There really were no white settlers in the area. It was mostly miners. As they've looked at it through history and kind of debunked it, it was most likely the Pima Indian tribe was the mortal enemy of the Yavapai Apache. The Pima Indian men went over a couple ridges hunting and left the women and children collecting cactus fruit. The Yavapai saw that and rode in and slaughtered them. The bones were left they're left sitting out in the desert for many, many years, to the point where, in the early 1900s, collectors would go out and take them as souvenirs. So that's not a great look for anybody, but that's the reality of it. For the best of my research, you can't really make that, I guess, kinder and gentler. It was what it was. It was a different time. Yeah. But of course, with the bones being out there and then easily found, I was like, okay. So that kind of led me to, well, this is going to be the start of something creepy. So that led to that picture with the skeletons crawling out of the ground to attack the PCs. So I thought, okay, that's definitely a winner. So we have that. And then we just kind of built around there from there, like who would be in control of that. Got inspired. I know I sent you the picture. The cover was actually, the Superstition Mountains were called the Superstition Mountains because the Native Americans used to say that the mountains were haunted. When we have storms, the clouds roll in and they get below the mountains. So it's a really neat place, but it's also pretty creepy. And there's been, back and forth of different rumors about different abductions and weird creatures, the chupacabras. So all that kind of wrapped up for Arizona to like really lend itself to the weird frontiers.
Yeah.
And then when I was riding one day, I kind of saw the cover. I was riding towards the Superstition Mountains, and we're having a storm come in, and it looked like two very focused eyes, and that's that picture I sent you with the clouds. But It looks like there's two eyes like staring at me, and I'm like, wow, that's really cool. It almost like warns you to stay away. You're not wanted here. Get away. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, that's my cover. Henry Martinez did my cover for me. He's a former Marvel artist. Thought he did a wonderful job of taking what I told him and building it into, a really nice cover. I wanted it to look like an old serial Western. So I think he did. It was like, when I grew up, TV was black and white. We watched Westerns. Saturday afternoon was mostly black and white TV in the 70s. I was sitting watching my dad, and at the end of each Western, whether it was Gunsmoke or, Rawhide or, Lone Ranger, it would be tune in next week for the exciting adventures of. And I decided, okay, this is what I want. I told Henry about it. And then, he made that happen. So I thought that came out really cool. The grayscale I thought that really fitted that genre of what I wanted to do.
Yep.
And if you flip to the back cover, so that's Joey Dosel. That's the other artist on the book. I have 3 artists on the book. Joey Dosel is that one. And then I have Carlos Castillo, who did some of the interior art. We'll talk about that later. But I thought all the artists nailed it. I think they did a great job. But I had sent Joey a picture with the clouds coming down below the Massacre Grounds. And the clouds are like floating almost on the ground as you walk up. It's several thousand feet up in the air. But as the clouds come in, they almost look like you could reach up and touch them. So I thought, okay, this is a really cool picture. Let's work around this. So then obviously he added some caricatures, some different PCs to it. And I thought he really did a great job on that. So that's the rear cover. The rear cover is just as cool as the front cover, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, you have a unique opportunity with this adventure in that you're presenting something that's very familiar to you. It just kind of owing to the genres that we typically work in as creators, especially in the fantasy realm. Not many of us get the chance to do stuff like that. I know off the top of my head of 2 other people that have kind of gotten the chance to mix some of that stuff in there. Actually, now 3 that I think about it. One of them is actually here in chat. My business partner and friend, the Wonky. His adventure, his Heinous Harvest, is built largely around places that were familiar to him as a child. So like his childhood home is in his Heinous Harvest. The church that his grandma went to is in there. And then my friend, the Basic Expert, set one of his adventures in a post-apocalyptic version of Treasure Valley, Idaho. So he got to do that. And then Shane Hensley, also working in the Western genre, also a fellow Arizonan like yourself. And he's definitely incorporated some of that local folklore and legend and history into his writing as well. But that's something that I really enjoy about the Western genre is you are working largely, even if it's Weird West, you're working within the framework of a real place and a real time. And you're kind of more readily able to draw on some of those events that occurred.
Oh, I think 100%. I think I've told you this before, but if I haven't, when I sat down and wrote it, it wrote itself in like 2 weeks. That's unusual for a first-time writer to write it completely out in 2 weeks. Now, I didn't say it was ready to roll in 2 weeks, but the story wrote itself. I mean, once I started going, I think I had a lot of Old West cowboys to refer to. You know, how you go to your NPC, and a lot of books now have roll for the NPC's personality, or you use Greg's henchman thing, and it kind of tells you what their personality is. But on that, it was like I knew exactly what this old guy was going to act like, because I was like I based a lot of the NPCs off of older gentlemen from my life and older cowgirls from my life, and I had a lot of fun with that. So it wasn't like, I think a lot of that came off really authentic. And I think that's exactly right. Like if I I was a police officer for many years, so a detective story isn't really far out of bounds.
Right.
I didn't write one, but it isn't. It isn't part like I can sit and like today. I mean, it was just like I was a police detective when I retired, and so some of those stories. But I also incorporated some of that into this adventure because I wanted to have a little bit of a murder mystery. So I threw that in there too because I'm like, okay, I can write that. Obviously, we don't have the same criminal investigation tools in the Old West that we did, in the 90s. But when you sit and write what you love and write what you know, I think it comes out in your writing.
Yep. That's you accidentally tripped over something that I don't know much about it. I'm by no means an expert, but I did do a lot of reading in college. Specifically, I spent an entire semester writing a 20-page paper on the Pinkertons.
Oh yeah.
And something that I discovered is that right in this time period, this time period that we all think of as the Old West, simultaneously the Pinkertons were starting to develop and utilize for the first time a lot of these kind of modern policing techniques that we now rely on. So collection of evidence, fingerprinting, these were things that were starting to come into practice in some investigations right around this time. And so I don't know where I'm going with this other than just to bring it up, but that's it's definitely interesting to think about and maybe something that could fuel adventures or imagination for kind of expanding on this particular genre or this particular time period.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up. The Pinkertons actually ended up turning into, do you know what agency? So the Pinkertons are actually directly related to, do you know the agency?
Let's see.
Federal agency.
I'm tempted to say the Secret Service.
Secret Service or CIA.
Okay. Yeah.
So the Pinkertons, it's funny that you bring it up, actually make an appearance. So this arc in this area is designed to be 3 different modules or adventures. Like I said, nobody really calls them modules anymore, but that's what we used to call them. But it's designed as a 3 adventure arc, and then we're going to move on to some other places in Arizona. The Pinkertons actually, one of the Easter eggs buried in there is you find evidence of disappearance of somebody. And I don't want to ruin it for you, so I want people to play. But you find a horse, and you find a letter from his fiance, and you find all this stuff, but you don't find him. Well, in the second adventure, so you kind of build off that, and if you look around, you may or may not find stuff. But in the second adventure, the Pinkertons come looking for him. So the Pinkertons are a big part of the Old West. I think you hit it right on the head. It's just, that's some cool stuff about the Old West. Old West, there were alien sightings. There were all kind of crazy stuff in the Old West. Yeah. It's really an open genre, and it's also a very small part of the U.S. history. So you got to remember, when the Old West is going on, you still have feudal Japan going on, somewhat, and then you also have Australia's outback that is basically a different Old West. So you have some other genres that are going on that kind of all fit in. So you have some really cool stuff in that time period, but it's very, very small, but it's very romanticized. You've got a lot of stuff to work with there. As far as I loved your Black Powder article. You already brought it up. I already loved it. I was sitting there absorbing that and going, okay, how can I use this? And then, but yeah, you've got a bunch of cool weapons. You've got everything from machine guns, the Gatling gun, to, dynamite, to, my passion, for collecting old stuff is I like to collect Old West guns. So old Colts, old Marlins, old Winchesters, old single shot rifles. I love all that stuff. So old horse equipment, cavalry stuff is all cool. So I think the sky's the limit as far as writing, but the Pinkertons are a huge part of it. Like the detective era started then. But then you go into England and you've got detectives kind of already going over there. So it didn't really start with the Pinkertons, but you have, detective stuff going on in England.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Now, you've also brought up Old West guns. what is kind of the best piece in your collection, or your favorite piece in your collection, as far as Old West guns that you've managed to get your hands on?
Well, I have a 5110 Buffalo rifle that I really like.
Nice.
I've got a 3855 lever action that is authentic, and a 3220 that is a little bit newer, but I love that too. And then I've got a map set of 45 Colts
Nice.
that I like too. I don't know. I have a lot that I like. Like, I'll just start naming, but I guess those would probably be my top ones. But then I'll probably go look at a safe and go, I forgot this one. I also have an old Weebly that is authentic. That's pretty cool. I haven't really been able to shoot it, but it's really cool and old. It's got a cool patina to it. But that's actually England, and somehow it ended up over here. So I thought, okay, that's really cool. So you have a bunch of cool older stuff. That's neat. I love all that stuff. So I just collect, and some of them you really shouldn't fire anymore, but I always try to at least get a couple of rounds through them, just because otherwise it's like, I don't just like wall hangers. That's not my thing. I had an old trapdoor that was a Spanish-American War arrow trapdoor rifle, which it's funny because everybody thinks we went to war with these advanced weapons, and a lot of the Buffalo soldiers they ended up fighting with their trapdoor rifle. So I had a trapdoor arrow one, but I couldn't fire it, and it didn't shoot well, and I ended up trading it off and getting something else. And people were like, "How did you trade that?" I was like, "I just didn't love it. I couldn't shoot it," and I was like, "I didn't want it." So it had a almond shaped barrel, which was real common for the time, and so it would just keyhole bullets, and I'm like, okay, this is no fun to shoot.
Yeah. Now we do have a question here from Wonky in chat. Where does this module sit on the historical fiction to Gonzo Weird West scale? I know we're dealing with like undead and things like that in this, but where would you kind of place that? Because I know there is some Weird West elements, but where would you personally say this sits?
So I think it's about 60-40 real West to Gonzo old school. So if you, and Ryan's got a picture of it, I replaced, so the Yavapai Apache were a horse tribe. They hung out in the mountains. They pretty much staved off Arizona being settled for a decade. They were the ultimate horse warriors. They used all that. So I took that and made that into the Chipaya riders, or the Nainita riders, which is what you're seeing right there, is a Yavapai Apache warrior named Dark Lightning that rides, what else? A giant mountain lion. So it does, the historical part is there in theory, but yeah, there is a lot of Gonzo. Have a good time with it. But the beginning, I'm sorry, excuse me. So the beginning of the adventure, I start you off, you have very little interaction with weird anything. So you start off kind of learning your ropes as a greenhorn, and I keep it very tame. So like the first couple of things you do is kind of find your way through the desert. And if you roll a weird cactus or something like that, you might have a weird encounter, but the encounter might be very straightforward. You get attacked by a wolf. As you move on, there's an opportunity for you to capture and train a Mustang. So Arizona Mustangs are still prominent. They live by the Salt River. You can go down and visit them. You can adopt one. So I thought, okay, how cool would it be if who doesn't want to break a Mustang? So you make your rolls, you jump on that Mustang, and it might buck you off. It might not. There's penalties if you don't roll well. So I think I did some stuff like that to kind of keep the Old West flavor. And obviously growing up riding horses since I was 10, I was just like, okay, we got to give this a little bit of like just this Old West kind of slow getting into it feel. But then it picks up, and we have a little bit of weird, and then we have a little bit of more weird, and then we go back to this struggle between, so the Coyoteros are kind of this gang of bandits. And it's just the old school bad guy versus black hats versus the white hats, you guys being the white hats. And so the ongoing antagonist for the next two adventures, even after this one, is just a gang of thugs and bandits. I didn't put a lot of supernatural into that. I did obviously with, normally we don't ride mountain lions, but I thought, okay, so we have a little bit of both. That's probably a very long answer for a very short question.
Yeah. It's a thing. It's always a delicate balancing act with Weird West in particular. um, and especially Weird Frontiers, because Dave Beatty has put a lot of very specific lore and uh, intrigue kind of built into the setting that's uh, essentially Weird Frontiers is built around. However, when you introduce new players to like I feel like it's this way for Cthulhu. It's really this way for any kind of vaguely horror type setting, and that's what Weird Frontiers is in a lot of ways, is Lovecraftian horror mixed with the Wild West. If you're too heavy-handed right off the bat with here's all the weird stuff, it's not weird anymore. It's just normal. It's different from what we expect, but if you don't kind of slowly introduce or slowly unfold the weirdness, really the same way that you funnel characters in DCC, funnel them into the weirdness, the impact gets lost. And so I think it is a very kind of delicate tightrope to walk. And it sounds like that's the approach that you've taken as well, is to basically funnel people into the weirdness of a Weird West type setting.
Yeah, I think I think what I wanted is I wanted people to experience the West. So there's a lot of downtime where you're sitting around a fire. You're telling the different people that you're sitting with. So your first after you journey through the desert, you stop at Fort Righteous, which is a Mormon settlement. Which is very accurate to Arizona in that time. Fort Righteous was actually Fort Utah. It was actually wiped out by the Yavapai Apaches. In this setting, the Yavapai Apaches, we've made peace. So we don't have that. I think that history tells itself. I don't need to retell that story. If you wanted to, you could. I mean, all the elements are there. You could change it to do what you wanted with it. It's like any other adventure. Yeah. Let your conscious change mind to, they're not friendly anymore, and put them on horses instead of lions. But I thought, okay, so when the early settlers moved to the settlement and they start Fort Utah, this is in actuality, they befriend the Pima Indians and start using their water system, which is a canal-based system that's still in use today. And so a lot of that is extremely accurate. I just changed some of the names. Some of the names obviously are written for a book. Fort Righteous gives a really cool sound instead of Fort Utah. Mm-hmm. But you build off history and then you add elements. I mean, we didn't have Tommy Knockers, in the Old West. Tommy Knocker is an undead, but they're a fun character to go play. And there's a fun little Tommy Knocker hidden out there as an NPC. If you find her, I hope you do. Amelia's a really cool character. So I did a little bit of both. You can choose to ignore that as a judge and just run it straight. Run it as, without the Weird West. I think that would be super cool. Also, I kind of have gotten to the point in my life where I like kind of adding the gonzo in it, but what I do is just kind of work around it. So the gonzo adds elements, but it isn't like, I think I totally agree with you. Like if you have a ghost and a zombie and a undead, just every scene it's just after a while it's like, okay, this isn't anything. This is just like a video game where it just attack one thing after another. So I think the story has to build. There's a murder investigation, like I said. There's an ongoing antagonist, which is the Coyoteros, but then further on past that we have old school West, where we had factions where we're like, if you think about the Earps. So I stayed away from Tombstone because that story has been done a bunch, but my son is named Morgan. My youngest son's named Reed John, which is switched around as the Lone Ranger, John Reed. And my middle son is named Grant after Ulysses S. So a huge Old West fan. So as you look at history, the Earps actually had an ongoing antagonist with the Cowboys. So they were, so you go back and forth, and depending on history, obviously, which way I lie. The Earps were just as corrupt as the Cowboys, but you had this ongoing back and forth. So I started building that with the Coyoteros. There's a mention of kind of their boss in there. So the kind of the big, organized boss that's running the show, and then you figure out later on, okay, this is where she's at, and then by adventure 3, you're going face to face, and you're dealing with that element. So that's a very human, could happen today type story, but it's in the Old West, and I think it's very authentic. But then, yeah, obviously, I have a Massacre Grounds where skeletons are coming up out of the ground, and we've got you're getting attacked by the weird stuff. But they're character based. I think it was cool. And then starting to ride like mountain lions and bears and wolves, I thought, okay, this is just cool. I want to do this. So in the second adventure, because a bunch of fans reached out. So the new character class that I added, and you get it if you support the Kickstarter and you buy the module, is a new character class called the Chipaya Riders, which is actually divided into 3 different animals. The Mawa, which is a bear, the Naimita, which is a mountain lion, and the Hataquilla, which is a wolf. So you can ride any of the 3. It's not subclasses. It's just change which animal you ride. And I thought that was fun. And then I was talking to some fans, and they were like, I didn't realize how popular capybaras were. So my son, I show him that, and he's like, yeah, this is cool, Dad, but I want to ride a capybara. I'm like, okay. I was like, they're not really indigenous to Arizona. So there's a section that we go into the near in the second adventure that I actually said, okay, I could do this here because the near is like kind of a purgatory. Yep. Everything goes. So I'm like, we could have capybaras there. So you get your first glimpse of a capybara rider in there. And so, yeah, your friend is Wonky is like, okay, that's too over the top. But, I had a lot of fun with that. And I was just like, and then that's what my son Grant wanted. He wanted a capybara. So I'm like, all right, we got it. Let's see. And then Joey Dosel, he's become a dear friend. He's an artist on the book. We started goofing around, and he had that capybara rider like to me in like a couple hours. He's like, here. And I'm like, oh, dude, this is awesome. I'm like, okay, we have to put this. So we kind of back wrote that into the second adventure, just because it's like, okay, that's the fun of doing this. And I'm 51 years old, and I'm having a blast. Like 12-year-old me is so super excited to be doing this, and it's a labor of love. I mean, Ryan, I know you're writing your first adventure. I hope you don't think you're going to be paying your mortgage.
No, not.
Off the money you make from it. I mean, hey, every dime counts, and I love people spending their hard-earned money. But yeah, I mean, you're not going to, you're not going to give Trump or any of the multi-billionaires a run for their money anytime soon. Not writing adventures, but you can have a lot of fun and meet a lot of cool people, and just you can live out your inner fantasy. So I thought, I think I did that quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, you've mentioned this a couple times, and people who are regulars watching this show know how much I love faction play. Part of why I love faction play so much is my affinity for the Western genre. And I once heard the great writer of both comic books and prose, Chuck Dixon, say that a Western is a story in which 2 sides come into conflict with each other, and that conflict can only end in violence. And this is kind of, for me, peak role playing. This is why I even tell people that they don't have to prep so much, and why I talk so much about like no prep adventures. If you fill a world with a bunch of different interest groups, and then your players start interacting with those interest groups, inevitably they're going to draw the ire of the other interest groups, because limited resources and a limited space that you've kind of put all these people in, they're not going to get along. And in a fantasy setting, or in this case a Western setting, that not getting along is going to involve drawing weapons on each other.
Yeah, I think anytime, writing an adventure, everybody says, oh, you're telling a story. You're not really telling a story. You're telling a lead into a story.
Yep.
Your characters, your PCs are actually telling the story. A good judge is going to let them tell their own stories and adapt it as you go. There's a test play going on. Bert Isla, who is a wonderful editor and human being, is sick as a dog, by the way, and he's still running a playthrough on Steam, Steel, and Murder, his channel. So he did a test through, and his players, who are very hardcore, did something that I did not anticipate. And I was like, wow. So we actually looked at it, and obviously the book, we're going to send it. It's all done and ready to go to the printer. But we actually went in and fixed a couple of words, because I was like, wow, I really hadn't had players do that. And I was just like, and so has you ever had anybody do that? I'm like, no. So, most players will run from bullets or at least get out of the way. And his players just said, no, like Iowa Silver, and went right at him. And I was just like, and it cost them a bunch. They all got slaughtered. But I was just like, well, I never really thought about that or the consequences of that. I think he handled it pretty well. But, that's that deal where they're going to start writing their own story just by their own personality. Some role players and people, some judges get frustrated with this, but some guys like to role play. They want to do voices. They want to act out. They want to talk to people. Others guys just want to be murder hobos. They just want to kill everything. And so a gentle balance in the middle is my favorite type of game. So too much of either one of those is boring to me. Mm-hmm. But I've played with both type of characters, and I like people that really want to role play. And I've been very happy, like sitting and watching them perform. But after a while, it's like, hey, we're out. The rest of us want to play too. And then I have a good Thursday night homebrew group that I run a game for, and they are some murder hobos. Like if I put an NPC out there and they have any kind of information, I got to get it out quick, or they're going to kill them.
Yep.
It's just, that's the way they play. And it's just like, but yeah, so you're just you're leading into a story, and then they're going to finish the story. So you can write this beautiful synopsis, and if they do this, it's going to go here. And then as soon as you get started, that all goes out the window.
Yep. Yeah, you set the table for them. You set out a bunch of things that they can find, they can interact with, and then whatever mess they end up making of what you set there, that at the end of the day is your story. It comes at the end.
Yeah, that is very true. It's and it's fun to do it. But you know what? And if you don't like the way the story ends, just run at a different time with some different group, and you'll get a different end of the story. So it's I'm laughing because, like I said, my Thursday night group, hopefully they tune in and listen. Man, you guys stop murdering everything. I have some really cool information to give you.
Mm-hmm. So to let everyone know about the campaign specifically, at $10 you get the PDF for this product. At $15 you get PDF and print-on-demand version. And then what's this $50 tier that you have here? The PDF, POD, and seat at the table.
So I'm going to run the adventure on Roll20 for a group of probably 5. You'll just play the game with me. If you buy a seat at the table, it'll be a virtual table. If I got 5 people at Arizona, I'll host the game at my house or someplace cool. I doubt that'll happen. But for the most part, the VTT assets, which are a stretch goal, are already made. So they're already in Roll20, so I can play. But yeah, you basically buy a seat. You might have some cool people playing with you, depending on how I divide that up. And yeah, you're going to run through the whole adventure with me, whether that takes 2 separate sessions or 3. Usually it's running about 3 sessions, but yeah, I'm at your disposal. I'll make the schedule work. And then we'll just have some fun with it. You'll get to know me. I tell people, if you buy a seat for that, it's a good way to get to know me. It's a good way to have some fun. It's also a good way, if you're interested in doing some of the play testing for some of these other things that I'm working on, it's a good way for me to get to know you. Obviously, if you enjoy it, you have a good time, and you're a good game player, I have no problem inviting you back for a play test. I just thought, okay, it's a great way to do it. Originally, the stretch goal, believe it or not, was to take you out on horseback to Massacre Grounds, and we were going to do that, but that turned into a logistical nightmare.
Yes.
And I'm as insane as I am, I could not make that work for. I mean, you would have been paying $500 a seat.
Yeah.
For me to make that work.
I was about to say that is not $50 worth of content.
That was not. But I was trying to make something real, but then like flying into Arizona, I kind of live, on one side of the country, so that didn't work. So we thought, okay, what was the best other way? And hey, it's nothing fancy. I think you have a good time with it. And yeah, if it's something you're interested, yeah, I think there's a few seats left.
Yep.
I've heard there's some really cool people that bought some of those seats, so I'm sure get harassed plenty when we're playing, but that's the whole fun of it. But yeah, there was one of the things that like, okay, what can we do to spice this up and add a tier to it? And what I wanted to do just was too outlandish. I when I met you originally at North Texas, that was the tier. I was going to do it, and I had figured out logistics. I was like, okay, I can do it for this much, but then it was like I was doing it, and I wasn't making a dime off it. I'm like, this is a bad idea, Matt. Don't do this. And then if someone were to get hurt, I'm like, yeah, it's a 3-hour ride each way into the backcountry there. It's a beautiful ride, but yeah, it wouldn't work. And then it also would prohibit people from buying the book, because with Kickstarter, obviously you want to get all that stuff done before you release it to everybody else. So it would be a nightmare trying to get everybody in by a certain date and then getting them out and things. So it just logistically just didn't work. But yeah, I was crazy enough to try it. But the flip side of that is we will do the same thing, except you will be on your laptop and we'll have a good time. And I think it was a good way for me to meet fans. Hey, I still play. We run play tests for Massacre Grounds and the Future Adventures on Sunday nights. And then I still run a Dragonlance. I know that it's never going to go anywhere, but I wrote a whole Dragonlance campaign in a setting before the Cataclysm that is not in. And so my guys have been playing that for months, over a year, I think. And I run them on Thursday night. So I still play. So it's getting to meet new people to play. I thought it's fun. My favorite way to play is around a table, but I know the virtual with the VTT stuff has become quite normal. So if you want to do that, I at last look, I think there was 8 spots left out of 20. So yeah, jump in, grab one. I'd love to meet you.
Yeah. And Rex Steele here in chat makes a good point. Getting a horseback ride would be a Kickstarter on its own. There's mileage in this idea that you've come up with. Like it needs to, like, yes, the price tag needs to be higher, but something like an RPG cowboy camp type of scenario where, you come out for a weekend and learn how to ride and stuff like that and play RPGs. Maybe there's something there, or something to explore down the line. But yeah, that's a separate campaign, because that is a huge undertaking.
So believe it or not, this is how insane I was. Tanca Verde Dude Ranch is a dude ranch on. So I used to work at a dude ranch, but not Tanca Verde. So they're a wonderful dude ranch. It's, I think, a 5-star resort too, but it's not cheap. But it is. Hollywood stars used to go there. It's the foot of the Catalina Mountains in Tucson. So that was the other option: is don't play it authentic. Have the people go there. It's all inclusive. You get your food free, and then they have wonderful conference rooms. And then we go play, we go ride, we go play, we go ride. So maybe for future events, you got to get me through this Kickstarter first and fund me, and then we can play with other ideas. But yeah, as you well know, that I think cowboy camp would be. I'm in. Whole 100%. I'm in. I think they have an old Western saloon there. I think we have a good time, and we rent the place out and do that. They definitely are open to do it. My Boy Scouts were going to go there. So the other place to do that would be, one of the other dude ranches. So there's a few of them, but yeah, you got to get me through this Kickstarter first. I got to get funded. It's one of those deals. Money helps. Yeah,
definitely. Now, with some of the time that we have left here, as we were talking before the show, we stumbled upon an interesting topic. And one that I really want to talk about here, just because of how interesting it is. In addition to this adventure and kind of the future adventures that are going to be coming out of this adventure cycle set within the Superstition Mountains, you're also working on a different product, and that product is a baseball role-playing game. So explain to everyone. I know of no other way to say this. Just what the hell is a baseball RPG?
Okay, so I originally wrote a baseball RPG, and I'm friends with Greg Gillespie. Dr. Gillespie has been a wonderful mentor and a friend. But Greg is very honest. I said, I wrote this whole, baseball RPG. And he's like, that is not going to do real well, Matt. You're going to have to really sell that. You might want to write a couple other things first. What else do you know? Obviously, I met David. David's a first responder. He's a firearm, and I'm a police officer, so that all worked. So, but my first love has always been baseball. I played baseball growing up. My kids all play baseball. My 14-year-old was just in Alabama for a baseball tournament. So when you're coaching, it's a chess match, much like the tactics you use for Dungeons and Dragons or any kind of medieval role-playing game. And then I started looking at the dynamic between a pitcher and a batter and saying, okay, this is a duel between knights. So we have 3 strikes and 4 balls to work with. The pitcher is obviously trying to strike you out. The batter's trying to hit the ball or at least get on base. So it becomes this dynamic of a back and forth. So I kind of worked on that dynamic. I figured out, okay, how to break it down into dice, which we all love rolling. And then I adapted it into a game board, which I think was critical because it's like when the ball is hit, how do we figure out where it goes? So then I started working off that dynamic of, okay, how do I make the batter hit the ball, and how do I add bonuses and go from there? So once I started working on it, the grid map, I think, was the key element, how to figure out, trajectory of the ball and how it went. But after that, it's straight on just fighter versus fighter mechanics. It worked out really well. And then, of course, once the ball is hit, you have the whole dynamic of the infielders moving around. So the infielders are statted, just like a thief would be statted, or a barbarian or whatever else. So they move. Obviously, if their stats are high, they move better. If their stats are low, they don't move as quick. So when the ball's hit around them or anything else, but some balls are just hit well and they're not catchable. That's baseball, right? So the grid map really helped with that. And then as I worked and started doing some of the playthroughs, we changed some of the dice, how we went. And so it works off of a system that I completely custom built. I didn't like Statomatic was kind of the first baseball game that I was ever exposed to. Bill James, it's wonderful. If you're a stat head and you want to do authentic players, it's hard to beat. This is more roll up your players and go. I thought it would be really fun. So then I designed, after I got the game dynamic down, I said, okay, so I wanted it kind of late 1800s, early 1900s, before MLB took over and there got to be 30 teams. I wanted it to be these small 8 team leagues. The other thing that works for it is if you want to play a league of their own, you can definitely have a women's league, whatever you want. But I wanted that whole, crunchy, riding on trains, having embedded reporters, that whole vibe. And so I think that whole flannel, beginning of the modern era was a perfect setting for this. Plus, you can keep it small. So the whole theory was to have like an 8-team league with 8 of your friends. There is a broadcaster, which is basically the DM or the judge. So he can choose to have a team, and then you can flip off and on who's the judge. I don't think it matters all that much in the dynamic that you play. You can play just a one-off game where you just play against each other, roll up teams and play each other. You can play like when the adventure is available. I will have some box teams that you guys can play with, but it's more fun to roll your own. It's a die, we worked on it. I went back and forth using a D20, like 5D4, believe it or not. So it was based off scores of 20. And then I just went to say, you know what, let's just go 4 dice 6, throw out the worst one. So we have pretty high stats, and just went traditional BX with it. So it's very straightforward. It's intuitive the way it works. And the more I played it, so the pitching dynamic is you start off guessing what the guy's gonna throw, and then you guess his swing or whatever. So it start off with you using dice. Just you're hiding a dice behind a shroud, and so there's an instant reveal. So you use a shroud, which is a little cup like this. I'm having little helmets made, but a little Dixie cup like this, and put it down on the dice. Nice. And then you do your reveal. The dice, the number that is showing on the dice has to beat the number on the other player's dice. So it's kind of mono-y-mono. And the numbers are not just numerically higher or lower. It's what it is. At that point, it tells us you have to confirm your role as a pitcher or confirm your role as a hitter to either hit the ball or throw the ball. And then the dynamic of which pitches and everything else works off the dice roll. So it's intuitive. It's a little crunchy, but I think baseball players want crunchy. They don't want, if you wanted a traditional roll percentages, because you have let's say you have a 300 batting average and you roll percentile dice. And if you roll over, you roll 30% or over or lower, you hit. If you don't, I didn't really like that style of play. I think some people do. I didn't think that was fun. I think it's very basic. I wanted to have the ability to kind of take my players and go off the field. And then I wanted a franchise mode where I can you start off in this kind of old, 1899 town, and there's trains and there's newspaper reporters and there's injuries and there's, kind of gangsters betting on it. There's, shady people. The owner, you can play him anywhere you want. He's a good guy owner that wants to do everything he can for the town and the team, or you can play him the other way and just say, okay, this evil guy is trying to squeeze everything. So I think there was a lot of dynamics. I've read a lot of books. It's one of the genres I love to read. So, and I started piecing it together off that. So I think it plays really fun. I'm looking forward, actually, Ryan, to show it to you. I didn't know you were a baseball fan. And that's the problem I'm having right now is there's not I think it's a small niche group. So I don't know if you're going to LongCon, but I talked to the guys at LongCon. I talked to Matt and I'd asked, hey, could I maybe run a demo there? So I built a little mini stadium and with the grid, and then I've got miniatures. And of course, everything is better with miniatures. So I'm going to try to test it there at LongCon, at least for a day. I don't want to spend 4 days or 3 days or testing, but I would love to go run it for a couple hours. And and they said it was okay. So I think I will be trying to run it there. But yeah, it's all written. It's at the editor. Joey did some mock-up work for the cover yesterday for me. I think he did a great job. It's one of those deals where everything's on hold until the Kickstarter's done. But it was my first sitting down and writing an RPG. And then people were like, what are you talking about? And when you write something kind of different, people they don't really know what to think. They think about Blood Bowl. And it's not Blood Bowl. I mean, I guess you could murder people if you wanted to. It's not written like that. It's literally a straight up baseball game. If you want to go off the field and you want to stat out your characters, you drop it into like a BX system. I liked Mark Hunt's Gangbusters BX. I think it works perfectly for it. But you wouldn't literally drop them into like a fighter or barbarian or anything else. They come off the field. They've got stats. They would just get into like hijinks adventures. If you want to, whatever your imagination dreams up after that. Yep. I'm going to have a couple of things. But I was thinking like, oh, they're going to go off. They're going to get into bar fights. There may be somebody steals a cash box or kind of like Scooby-Doo type adventures after it. But the main thing goes on about the field, about building this franchise, and you can make trades and you can build up your stadium and you got to keep your players healthy. You got to keep them happy. So kind of, I love that whole idea of sports and RPG. I think it worked really well. So we'll see how well it's received. I don't, people are talking about, is it going to be a platinum seller, the drive-through thing? It's probably not going to be a platinum seller. There's been 10 baseball RPG games ever. So in the history that I did some research and I tried to find everyone. If I missed one, I apologize, but there's 10.
Are you familiar with the APBA that Crafty Matt is mentioning here?
Rules hidden. No, I'm not on that one.
It's I've never heard of this either, but apparently there's the game that Crafty is saying has been around since the 50s called APBA,
cool.
Which again, I don't know anything about sports simulationism outside of like video games, but that might be worth looking into. It sounds like some of these ideas are parallel. I just think it's interesting that Liar's Dice is the mechanic that you kind of landed on for this one, kind of tying it back to the Wild West theme.
Oh yeah, it it's the original thought was to maybe dump it into the Weird Frontiers in DCC, but then they kind of have a proprietary system, and so the baseball game is intrinsic enough where if I dumped it in as like a separate hook or a side quest, it would just it would make the book 100+ pages, and that wouldn't work because by the time you get all the rules and everything else, it really doesn't work that way. But I actually thought about, because like in the Old West they actually played baseball, Civil War they played baseball.
Yep.
So it really does work in Weird Frontiers. I just chose not to put it in there because, one, I wanted my writing to kind of stand on its own, and then I didn't want to you throw everything at it, it just turns into this, it's like if you put every color in the bowl, it turns out as much. It doesn't turn out as a pretty color. So I thought, okay, that's too much. But yeah, it would work you could make it work in Weird Frontiers with ease. The Arizona territory would probably not be a place where we'd have a baseball franchise, but if you went back east, you certainly would. You could have, the whole barnstorming era. You would have ease, and then, there's nothing says Weird Frontiers you have to play 1860s. You can play, they have the firearms change very little until we get into machine guns.
Yep.
And machine guns don't come out until after 1900s. But we have a Gatling gun and everything else, so you could dump it into that too, I guess.
I would go so far as to say the Wild West era doesn't end until 1917 when the United States enters World War I. Right,
and then there's the mechanism and the whole there's just a big jump into mechanization of everything, and then But up until then, like I said, you can have a lot of fun with it. I think sports is a wonderful idea for RPGs. I know that there's a hockey one. I've never played it. I've never heard of the one that he mentioned, and I'm going to go look that up. I specifically stayed away from reading about other ones because I didn't want anybody to come out and say, well, you stole that from here, you stole that from here. Literally, I sat down and I worked it out. My youngest and my oldest played baseball, so I would ask them questions. Obviously, I grew up playing baseball. My wife played softball. So I would ask them questions. And then I've got a few friends that play. So I was like, well, what about this? What about this? So we went back and forth. And then historically, I just love old history baseball. And then I think it's, if I ever get back, or if I could only go back, it's Darryl Brock wrote a book. I kind of really got the inspiration off that book. It's this newspaper reporter that kind of falls through time and ends up playing with the Cincinnati Redlegs. And I think that reading that book kind of spawned this whole idea of like the era that I wanted it in.
Yeah.
And I think there's a Civil War book that I wrote about baseball. I don't have the title with me right now, but I thought that this is another thing where they stopped fighting the Civil War for a minute and actually have a baseball game. And that's, I think it's historically accurate. Stuff is disputed. Yes, it happened. No, it didn't happen. It's a great story if it didn't happen. But if you go to Cooperstown, it's been a couple of years since I've been to Cooperstown, but yeah, it's all about the history, and they tell, railroad guys played baseball, took a break. Miners had baseball teams. I think it's a really cool era. So it kind of lends itself to it. So you can kind of dump it where you want. And then that's the RPG part, right? So the franchise and building that up is the whole meat and potatoes of it. But the other part is like, where do you set it? Are you in, New York City? Are you in, the West, and you're this struggling franchise that's, just hooked on with this, kind of a minor league. And so you're the new fledgling team out of it or whatever. And I thought, okay, how else am I going to make it so everybody can play? And I think the dynamics is that you could get 8 or 9 of your buddies and play a full league schedule. And even when you're not playing your own team, you can jump in and play one of the other characters on the field, or you can play a newspaper reporter, or you could play, anybody off the field. So kind of the dynamics is somebody can drop in and play one of the other position players, and you can have all your buddies play at the same time.
Yep.
So I think that was the fun part about it, is like, so it's not just designed for like a one-on-one type game. It's designed to have a bunch of people jump in. So, hopefully the concept takes off. The more I look into it, and the more I play tested it, seems really solid. I've just enjoyed it. I've been warned about it. It's one of those deals where, when you start writing RPGs and you decide to do this, I'm 51. This is a new career for me, and I'm going to have a lot of fun. I'm going to kind of do what I want, because it's like, at this point, I'm not going to be a rich man. I'm not going to make millions off it, but I'm going to have a lot of fun with it. Mm-hmm. But you also realize that, Shadow Dark could happen. I mean, it could take off, and that thing's just a juggernaut. But, for the most part, you're probably going to make a few bucks. You're going to make a lot of friends, hopefully. And that becomes the real key to it, is you're having a good time and you're doing what you love.
Mm-hmm. Now, have you given any thought to what this role-playing game will be called? Do you have a name for it?
So yeah, I was actually talking about it, and a fan actually suggested Bottom of the Ninth. So it's Bottom of the Ninth RPG baseball, and there might be a tweak to that. So I asked for a mock-up cover real quick, and I kind of have it in that 1899 era. So yeah, I mean, it's going. It's it's kind of one thing at a time. I have to finish one thing before we launch wholeheartedly into the other. But yeah, I was talking to a few people, and somebody suggested that, and I really liked that name. And then I kind of tried on a few other ones. But then Joey jumped in. He was like, "No, that's perfect," and he sent me something with it. It was a quick sketch. When you started bringing artists on for your book yet?
So I'm working. My business partner's an artist, so he's already he's doing the art for my book.
Oh, you're fantastic. So yeah, so I just made a suggestion, and he sent me a quick sketch. It was like, "Here, what do you think?" And I was like, "Oh, that's actually perfect." So yeah, I think we settled on Bottom of the Ninth for that. I thought that was a cool genre. I looked at a couple of other old school terms, but I think the RPG in itself is a little bit odd, where people aren't going to really know what it is. So using something that's commonplace was kind of important. But yeah, that's what we've got for it so far.
Because I just sitting here thinking about what to call this thing, I came up with 3 names that I would have used. The first one is Sluggers.
Okay.
The second one is Mudville 9.
Mudville 9 is a big, yep.
And then the third one, this one's actually my favorite. I think if it were me who was creating this, I would call it Holy Cow.
Yeah, because you are a Cubs fan.
No,
you're a Harry Carey fan.
Yes.
Okay.
But my team's the Braves. But when I think baseball, that's what pops into my head.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a baseball term. I mean, I think of Phil Rizzuto back when he used to do the Yankees, and he used to come out and "Holy cow!"
Yeah.
And if you're a Cubs fan, obviously, so yeah, that's a great thing. Yeah, the name part of it kind of stuck last night. I don't know if that'll change. We'll see. I mean, it's a labor of love. I'm hoping more people get at LongCon. I think that is November. Actually, I don't think. I know it's November. I'm hoping to get a good glimpse of what the interest level in it. And obviously, off your show, I appreciate you giving me time to talk about it. It's honestly, it's wonderful. Just because, if you're interested in stuff like this, reach out, because everything. Unfortunately, our world runs off money. Nothing is super cheap to put out. For myself and Cranky Clydesdale Publishing, I want to put out stuff that's big and thick, with lots of pictures, lots of art, lots of stats, lots of NPCs. I want to do it the way, like when I picked up Keep on the Borderlands, is it had so much in there and is beefy. So I want everybody to grab a book and be like, okay, this is not a 6-page pamphlet. This has got some meat to it.
Yeah.
And we can kind of dig in. And like, I love art. I always have. I used to be a pretty decent artist. My art now is carving wood. I can't draw as good as Joey and Henry and Carlos. Those guys are phenomenal. But I grew up drawing, and I think, hey, I'm a huge fan of having art and books. So when you do all that, the price goes up, and then you got to publish it. PDFs are nice because you can keep your costs down, but also you don't bring any costs back. So it becomes like this weight of how we're doing.
Yep.
So,
but not like, I love hearing about people's ideas like this because it's something unique. It's something well thought out. It's a simulationist baseball game, which is not something I would have thought of in a million years, but you have put all the thought in the world into it. So that's what I want to see more than anything else out of other RPG creators, is who has taken an idea to basically the ludicrous degrees of thought that you actually need to take something to have an idea that's worth presenting to other people. So like, this stuff interests me, even, even for something that's outside of what we normally talk about on the show with, baseball. That's interesting.
Well, and I'm going to bring it back to Massacre Grounds for a little bit. I put the approach into training a Mustang. One, because Arizona Mustang is still a fabulous, cool horse, and it's part of history. But I didn't just want you to roll a percentage dice and be like, okay, if you get 50% or higher, it's trained, bang, it's over with. No, there's steps that you have to go through to, like, from your approach to getting it to trust you, to actually getting on. And then if you make your rolls and you do it, you get bonuses, obviously, by your judge. That's a sport right there. And as you jump on, so that dynamic is all because I love horseback riding. And when you get bucked off a horse, you don't float down on like a bed of feathers and like hit the ground hard. So the DCC system with the big rolls, when you get bucked off, it hurts.
Yeah.
So that's the whole dynamic that I really wanted to play with, is when it went bad, it went, there's consequences. And when it goes good, okay, that there's good stuff. But and throughout the game, like when you break this Mustang, this is Massacre Grounds, not baseball. This horse doesn't, like, you're learning to train this horse. So you're making rolls throughout the game. And I've had a couple of test players like, I don't want this horse anymore because it's like, it does stupid stuff, but horses do stupid stuff until they trust you. And so, you get on, you make your roll that each day it like gets a little less ornery and a little less ornery, and then eventually it's broke. Or you go spend $150 and buy a broke horse from David's, from the core book, store.
Yeah.
But that's not as fun, right? Because somebody like me that loves horses really broke that down for you and said, okay, this. And then I'm sure that, as we play it more, hopefully, I might adapt it. It's like, okay, this worked. Hey, this might even make it work better. But that's the whole fun of it. It's like Dungeons and Dragons didn't stop at BX. When, AD&D came out, you could like sword speed. Like we never used it, but I was like, wow, if you really wanted to geek out on it, I guess you really could think about like how fast are you swinging this thing. So that's kind of the different versions we have. And I think for baseball, it was like, okay, how is this going to work? So then left-handed, right-handed pitchers, switch hitters, we've got all these dynamics in there that stat heads are really going to get into. And so I am looking, like, this very much was written as a first edition. Like, I know that I'm going to get people to say, why did you do this? Why didn't you do this? And in play testing, I've actually changed some of the stuff because I've gotten some feedback. I'm like, you know what? You're freaking right. I'm like, let's do that. And when I started out with it, I didn't have left and right-handed hitters, because in Dungeons and Dragons, you don't. Like, it's your sword swinger, you're a right hand or left hand. No, the only thing I could ever see is you're climbing a stair in a castle, rounded thing. It's like if you weren't left-handed and you're trying to go up the stairs to attack, you're going to be at a disadvantage. But other than that, I don't think I've ever said, oh, my character's right or left-handed. But then when I was playing, he goes, well, was my batter right or left-handed? And then, or is he a switch hitter? And I'm like, oh, wow. Like, and so then I started taking that dynamics into effect. And yeah, you start really getting crunchy after that, but that's the fun part of it. If you like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And other people just want to sit down and play. They're like, just tell me what I got to roll. And that's fine too. But I like the other part of it. I like the dynamics and stuff. So I brought that into Massacre Grounds too. And I said, how do I want to do this? And then, people, I'm going to jump back to Massacre Grounds again. So if my stretch goal was the VTT, my first stretch goal is everybody gets the VTT assets. My last stretch goal is an annotated version where I actually tell you my thinking on everything in the book. Like every character I tell you about, this is my inspiration for this character. This is my inspiration for this scene. This is my inspiration. And a lot of them are like my personal friends and people that a lot of them have passed because they're older gentlemen and ladies. But that's my stretch goal. If I get to the 5,000 mark, everybody that bought a print copy will get that as a print copy. I'm not going to have it as a PDF copy. Simply, I don't want people cut and pasted. It's very PG-13-ish. There's nothing that I'm not proud of in there, but it's definitely not something I want people to cut and paste because it's pretty much raw me and then raw my friends and my crazy growing up. But you really get to see like the inspiration and the building blocks for all that. It started here and went here to where we were at. And I talk about in there like how I got into role-playing games and how I got into reading about Dragonlance was my first love. And I got into how I'm bored on a horseback backpacking trip, and I would have Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weiss's book, and I used to sit under a tree and read. And so I talk about all that in there too. But that's all the things that we're talking about. It's just like it's built off. You can tell when something is just not just banged out.
Yeah.
And and there's nothing wrong with that if you're doing it as a career and you're not. I don't want to say you're not engaged, but you're not. You don't have any skin in it. You can tell. Like when somebody just kind of bangs out an adventure, you're like, all right, this was all right. Yep. But when somebody really loves it and kind of romanticizes with it, I think it makes it better.
Well, I, for one, am looking forward to the release of both Massacre Grounds and Bottom of the Ninth. Anyone who ends up in a game that I am running at Bottom of the Ninth, you will have to put up with me speaking in this voice for the entire duration of the game.
Yes. And it's funny because people are like, oh, you can do voices. And I will have to say, if you sign up for a game with me, I do my best to do voices. I am a straight come at you type guy, and I don't do voices a lot. So please don't be disappointed. You'll have a good time and we'll laugh and I'll make fun of you. And I expect you to make fun of me, but I don't do voices. And people are like, you got to learn to do voices. I'm like, yeah, I was a cop for a long time. I was never, I just don't have that in me. But I love stuff like that. I think absolutely. So, and the cowboy genre definitely lends itself to that.
Mm-hmm. Man, thank you so much for coming on tonight. This has been a very informative, very interesting conversation, both about westerns and baseball, two great American pastimes. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of your work with us. Once again, want to remind everyone there are 7 days left as of the live broadcast of this show. You can find the link to Matt's Kickstarter for Massacre Grounds in chat. Those of you who are watching after the fact, you will find it in the pinned comment beneath this video. Matt, there is one question everyone has to answer when they come on Rollin Bones for the first time. Before we let you go, I need you to answer this question. The answer can be as philosophical or as sophomoric as you want it to be. But if you could put anything on a t-shirt, what would it be?
Oh, wow. Let's see. I'm trying to think of something. If you see me running, run with me, because I don't run.
Yeah, I can do that.
When we were police officers, it was just like, we used to say, like, if you see cops running, like from something, it's really, really bad. So that's kind of a tip of the hat to those guys. Obviously, if you're a history person, World Trade, they ran towards danger. The firemen did too. So when you see first responders running, it's not a good thing. And so that's kind of that. But, with a little more time, I'd probably come up with a little better one. But you kind of caught me off guard with that question. I would have liked a little prep for that one, because I think I could have. But yeah, that'd be my first one.
Gotcha. Well, Matt, thank you once again for coming on the show. Next week we will be back. I don't know who will be on the show or what we'll be discussing. I have some exciting stuff scheduled for August. Black Lodge Games is going to be coming back on to talk about the Shucked Oyster. Jeff Talanian will be coming back on for a deep dive into 7 short stories of Clark Ashton Smith. So there's all kinds of cool stuff coming up. I've got some great interviews scheduled even into September. I've got some cool stuff coming up. So lots of stuff from Rollin Bones coming down the pipe. Next week we will be back, and we'll be doing this on the regular like we have been. So until next time, guys, please go back Massacre Grounds on Kickstarter. You know where to find the links. They're here in chat. They are underneath this video. And whether you rolled a 1 or a 20, I'm so glad that you rolled your bones with me, Ryan Howard, and I will see you guys next time.